The trade winds are blowing in the NBA, but let's look at the other side of the equation today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is January 29th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, it's trade season. Big news coming out of the NBA with the Darren Fox likely asking for a trade, or the Sacramento Kings at least open to exploring a trade. So we have to ask, how big do the Magic want to go? And more importantly, what are the Magic willing to give up? We're going to talk about trade deadline stuff on today's episode of Locked On Magic. But before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. And you can make Locked On Magic an even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic Daily Newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. The NBA world was set buzzing at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, when Shams Charania reported that the Sacramento Kings are open to exploring a trade of Darren Fox. One of the big fish that everyone anticipated could be available at the trade deadline now seems to be available because him and the Kings couldn't come to a contract extension agreement. The Kings have kind of fallen off their perch from 2 years ago. They're playing a little bit better now, but still a little bit of room to catch up in the standings. It's a mess. The Kings are 24-22, 10th in the East, 10th in the West. They're still a better record than the Magic. Let's not kid ourselves here. But they seem to be moving in a different direction. There's a reporting out there. I believe Chris Haynes reported that Fox has his eye on one team specifically, but is open to other locations. Most people it seems reporting is pointing toward that team being the San Antonio Spurs. Darren Fox has been a player that is on the Magic wish list, or has been on Magic fans' wish list. In fact, we did a whole episode on Darren Fox way back in November, December, somewhere in there. Undoubtedly, he checks off a lot of boxes for this Magic team. They need a point guard, table setter, scorer, someone who can get the ball to their best players, someone who can distribute the ball and move it. Darren Fox does that. He's a true point guard in every sense of the word, averaging 6.2 assists per game, averaging 6.1 assists per game for his career. Gets a steal and a half per game. He's not a bad defender. Has never been considered a good defender. And he's a scorer. 25.2 points per game this season, 21.5 for his career. He's averaged at least 20 points per game in each of the last 6 seasons, including this year. I argued back in December, there have been, before we get to that, there have been periods throughout the course of the year where the Magic were the betting favorites to get Darren Fox. That they were the team considered to need a player, a table setter, a point guard, a scorer like Darren Fox. Now, I've argued that Fox isn't quite the answer you think he is. He is a name. He's a former All-Star. 2 years ago, he was an All-Star. He's a former All-Star. He's pretty durable. He's played at least 70 games in the last 2 seasons, although he's had some seasons in the 50s. Gives his team an element of speed that they're missing. But I would argue that his 3-point shooting isn't where the Magic needed. He's shooting 32.4% from 3 this year. He shot below 30% several years. He's a career 33.3% 3-point shooter. And even though his volume is up, he's around 6 3-pointers per game, which the Magic probably needs some volume shooters. Even with Domantas Sabonis helping set him up, or Malik Monk helping set him up, not the shooter that the Magic need. And I would argue the issue with chasing after Darren Fox is that he takes the ball out of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner's hands. Now, after Monday's game, that may not be such a bad thing, and I would agree the Magic need to add some offensive dynamism. They need some offensive variability. They really have only one way to attack, especially with the players they have available right now, and that can be stagnant to rely solely on Paolo and Franz ISOs. And look, neither of them are at full capacity and running at full speed after their injuries. So Monday's loss sucked, but I'm not sitting here judging this team. There's a lot more good than bad Monday night. And I think we'll see that hopefully on this West Coast trip. As I'm recording, Portland is beating Milwaukee. Not going to be an easy game on Thursday. Obviously, there is a hunger right now among Magic fans to do something. And, I'm usually very much a wait-and-see type guy. I'm like that. From what I understand, that's how Jeff Weltman is like too. That I agree 100%. Whether it happens now or later, which we'll debate this, the Magic do need something. They need more offensive variability. They need players who will attack off the dribble. They need more. They don't have enough right now. Plain and simple. They don't have enough right now. They need more offensive players to get where they want to go. And that's not just being the 4 or the 5 seed. It's eventually being a championship team. And as we talked with Keith Smith of Spot Track last week, this is the time to make these deals. This is the window for the Magic to add these kinds of players and put themselves in this position to make a trade, to add, to consolidate and add key players to their team. The question then is, how big do the Magic want to go? This front office has always been patient. It's the reality. Annoyingly so sometimes, but they've always been patient. Their philosophy has been, we're going to add one thing per year, or we're going to kind of make only one major change to maintain continuity. This team has preached its continuity. It has been an asset to this team. I don't see that changing. I don't see this team suddenly trading 4 or 5 guys in one summer to go get a headline-grabbing name. Are the Magic in on Darren Fox? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so for the reasons that I said personnel-wise. But I don't think the Magic are in the business of trying to win the headlines. No one thought they won the headlines when they signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but that was universally, in the summer at least, declared a brilliant move by the Orlando Magic. And even though Kenny has struggled to shoot this year, I would still say it's a 3-year deal. I know we're almost a third of the way through it. Hold your judgment. He's been excellent on defense. The shooting's starting to come around. Once this team is healthy, I think we'll really see the benefits of what Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can bring. And, I think even I think next year he'll be even better. I am not concerned about Kenny. But the Magic do need to do something. We all agree on this. I'm not breaking any news here. So the question is, how big is that thing? Do the Magic want to go after a star like Darren Fox? Do they want to, Kevin O'Connor has thrown some things against the wall. He pitched a Steph Curry trade. It's not going to happen. He pitched an Anthony Davis trade on the Bill Simmons podcast. It's not going to happen, but it's there. It's possible. It's something the Magic do have the assets to make. But again, like I said when I spoke with Keith Smith last week, what the Magic want to do is they want to continue to emphasize and allow Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner to grow into the stars they're becoming. They are looking for a player in that $20 to $30 million range. Not quite a superstar, but a starter level player that maybe is comfortable coming off the bench. Because personally, I don't think the Magic want to touch the starting lineup. I think they are very confident with Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Goga Bitadze heading into next year. I think that is their starting lineup. I don't see them chasing a Zach LaVine and taking on that massive contract, even though Zach LaVine is having a fantastic season, would check a lot of boxes for the Magic. He can be a little bit of a playmaker without dominating the ball. He's an excellent spot-up shooter. He can take over when he needs to. He would benefit this offense if you can get him to play defense, and if he's healthy, a really excellent player. even at that ridiculous salary. The Magic aren't there. They're not looking to take on massive salaries like that. They're looking to consolidate, plain and simple. They're looking to turn two players into one. And that's the side of the equation I don't think we're talking about. We know who the Magic's targets are. Colin Sexton, Anthony Simons, throw Cam Johnson in there. If you want to go smaller, Malcolm Brogdon. They're not chasing Levine or Brandon Ingram or Anthony Davis or Steph Curry or any other or Nikola Vucevic or any other all-star level player on the market. Maybe you could convince me Miles Turner's in play. Maybe. He's looking for a $30 million contract next year. I don't think the Magic want to pay that. So we know one side of this equation. We know what the Magic need or what the Magic might be looking for. What are the Magic willing to give up? Because that honestly tells you a lot more of what's at stake and when the Magic can act. I want to talk a little bit about what the Magic are offering at the trade deadline coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to our friends over at Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. I don't get the opportunity to go to NFL games a lot. I've been to a few Tampa Bay Buccaneers games. I've been to a few Jaguars games. I covered the Pro Bowl last year. The Pro Bowl is here this week. That's not a real football game, but if you want to go, that's all you need. Playoff games, though, are simply the best in any sport. NBA, MLS, MLB, NFL. Playoff games are the best. And if you want your tickets to the next playoff game, to Magic playoff games when they come up, to the Super Bowl in New Orleans, if you want to go to that, Game Time makes it so easy. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You know, the Magic are going to be out of town here in a little bit, but if you're looking to go to the NFL Pro Bowl, I'm actually going to pull up the Game Time app right here on my phone, if it will load, and tell you what's going on for the Pro Bowl. You can find great seats for this event. There it is, NFL Pro Bowl. You can find tickets as low as $25 for the Pro Bowl this weekend. $25. Where's $25 going to get you? It's going to put you up in the rafters in the upper bowl. But you can find an $82 seat in the P level in that mid-tier section at Camping World Stadium. Game Time gives you all these great seats and all these great ways to get to the game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We know who the Magic are targeting. I just rattled off some names. Colin Sexton's my favorite. Anthony Simons is the fans' favorite. Cam Johnson is a popular name, probably the most popular player, the most desired player on this trade market. Keith Smith pitched Malcolm Brogdon as a stopgap option. There are a lot of options for the Orlando Magic. And there's a lot of guys that can help this team. The Magic are buyers right now. They are looking to add to their team and looking maybe to help another team set themselves up for their offseason or reset their roster a little bit. They've got their treasure trove of draft picks. They got 12 second-round picks, I believe. They've got all their own picks, plus an extra pick in this year's draft, plus a Phoenix pick that might be valuable to someone because Phoenix is in flux. They get the middle of Phoenix and Washington in like 2026 or 2027. The Magic have a lot to offer. But trading players is a math problem. I told you there would be no math. I will do all the math. Do not worry. I will do all the math. But the way trades work in the NBA is that it's much a math problem as anything else. You got to be able to kind of get to the number. So like, if we're talking like a Zach LaVine who makes, let me pull up his actual salary because if you're a Zach LaVine person, let me dissuade you from that right now. Zach LaVine this year is making $40.1 million. He's got 3 years left on his deal with a player option in 2027 worth $49 million or about $49 million. The Magic aren't signing that. The Magic aren't taking that on, especially with his injury history. Same deal with Bradley Beal. Even if Bradley Beal would waive his no trade clause, I've seen some Phoenix I've seen some podcasters with the Suns pitch a Bradley Beal trade, saying maybe he would waive the no trade clause because he went to Florida for college. Bradley Beal would help. I'm not going to deny that. Great shooter. Not what the Magic are looking for right now. Like, again, like they're still kind of a developing team, and they're transitioning away from being a developing team. But ultimately, let's start here. What do the Magic have to offer? Well, obviously, they're not trading Paolo Banchero. They're not trading Franz Wagner. They're probably not trading. They can't trade Jalen Suggs until July 1st if they wanted to trade him. They're not trading Jalen Suggs. Those are your three core players. Take them off the board. Then you get to some interesting names. If you're going to trade for a big name player, teams will undoubtedly ask for Jalen Suggs, again, who can't be dealt at this deadline. But then you get Jonathan Isaac at $25 million, dropping down to $15 next year. Very reasonable contract. $15 million next year, by the way, is less than 10% of the cap next year. And so Jonathan Isaac is an interesting trade chip. He is eligible to be traded now. He's an interesting trade chip because you can bring in $25 million and the team that gets him drops to 15 next year. So it saves them $10 million next year, theoretically. I don't think the Magic want to trade Jonathan Isaac. They signed him to that extend deal, and I know he hasn't had a great season, but I think they signed him and put him into this weight gaining regimen, understanding this was a multi-year project. We'll see if it's successful or not. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's guaranteed to work, but I don't see the Magic giving up on that project yet. That's a lot of sunk cost in there. It would have to be a really good deal. But again, that's $25 million you can exchange. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is in the same boat. $22.8 million this year. I don't see the Magic trading him. He's been really good for them. Unless they are getting a very clear upgrade at the 2 or at guard that elevates this team, I don't see them trading Kenny. Again, part of the problem at this year's trade deadline is the Magic don't know how good they are. They don't, because they've been so injured. They haven't seen their primary starting lineup. Even if you're taking Wendell Carter instead of Goga Bitadze, they haven't seen that core lineup play hardly at all. And I don't think they want to give up on that because it showed signs. I said this earlier. I will say it again. There was more good than bad Monday night against Miami. The result sucked. The way that game ended sucked. Dropping that game sucked. But the Magic did a lot of good that makes me very confident about them moving forward. I chalk up a lot of that loss to fatigue, to be perfectly honest. And that is an excuse. It's not an excuse for losing, but it's an excuse for me not to panic, because that's something that that we expected and that we can fix. That's going to gradually get better as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. Again, Thursday's game in Portland. I'm turning around to look at my TV. Portland just beat Milwaukee 125-112. Not an easy game. Portland is playing very well right now, on a little bit of a winning streak, including the win in Orlando last week. That's a must-win game for Orlando. They got to beat Portland. They got to start stacking up some wins. But I'm not concerned about the state of the Magic right now. Having said that, they obviously do need to add to the team. So what do they have to offer? To me, the trade package for the Orlando Magic involves two players who are in and out of the rotation. Gary Harris is $7.5 million this year, team option for $7.5 million next year. There are a lot of people who I know who've said that $7.5 million is actually important because it could keep them under the aprons or under the luxury tax. I don't think the Magic care about paying the tax. The Magic will pay the tax right now. I think it is better for the Magic to spend that $7.5 million on a trade. So again, we talk about a consolidation trade. Cole Anthony is at $12.9 million this year. He's got 2 years left with a team option on that second year in 2027. So essentially only one more year of Cole Anthony at a reasonable $13.1 million next year, $12.9 million this year. Cole Anthony has turned it around a little bit. He's playing a lot better, but I think, no offense to Cole, love the dude to death, it really does feel like he doesn't quite fit this roster. And if you can upgrade the Cole Anthony role, I think that slots players into the correct spots. That slots players where they need to be. I do really like the idea of what Cole Anthony is. And again, that idea is why I like Colin Sexton, why I like Anthony Simons, or why you might like Anthony Simons. Those are upgrades to what Cole Anthony does. So here's the math. Cole Anthony's at $12.9 million. Gary Harris is at $7.5 million. That's $20.4 million you can spend. That's Colin Sexton. Sexton's making about 19. Anthony Simons is about 24. So you might have to do a little bit of math there. But that is your framework for a deal. Now, maybe a team might ask for Jett Howard. Then you got to ask about, well, which draft picks are you willing to give up? Then you got to figure some other things out, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But to me, that is the trade package the Magic are shopping around right now. Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and then we'll figure out draft compensation to take on some of those salaries. To me, that's what the Magic want to give up. Is that what other teams want? It's certainly up for debate. Not going to pretend that that's not up for debate. But that's where the Magic stand right now. That's what the Magic are looking for. And that's kind of where the Magic are at in the market. Again, like a Wendell Carter is going to make $11.95 million this year. He's down to $10.85 next year, which is actually a little bit of an impediment for them. And then he jumps up to 18.1 when his extension kicks in after the 2026 season. Again, he signed a max extension. So the time to trade Wendell Carter may not actually be this summer. But we'll see. Especially because he's coming off such a poor season. They're going to have to they can't address him until the offseason anyway. And that leads to the next big question. You've already answered who you want to target. You've already answered what you can give up. Next comes the big question too. When do you pull the trigger? When do you make a deal? The advantages of waiting or doing it now coming up here in just a moment. If you listened to my podcast with Keith Smith of Spot Track last week, if you didn't, wait till this episode ends and then go back and listen to that. Nice little hour-long episode for you there. One of the theories that I have about the trade deadline is the trade deadline is where teams with short-term goals deal with teams with long-term goals. There's more, there is a little bit more of the leverage is a little bit more. The teams have immediate needs. They address those immediate needs where teams are against teams that are setting themselves up for their off seasons. It's hard to pull deals off in the middle of the season. It is. But again, you see the teams that are trying to make deals happen. Phoenix, Golden State, they're trying to salvage bad seasons because they are win now teams. They are trying to get things done. You look at Dallas last year. Dallas was win now. They went out and aggressively addressed needs, immediate needs. Now look, the Magic are in a similar situation to Phoenix and Golden State. They're not where they want to be in the standings. They believe they should be playing better. They have immediate needs they need to address. The Magic need another attacker. They need more shooting, obviously. They need more offensive dynamism. And the loss of Mo Wagner has had a much bigger effect than I think anybody thought it would. The Magic are lacking some consistent scoring punch. Like, look, Tristan DeSilva can do it some days. Anthony Black can do it some days. Cole Anthony can do it some days. You just don't know where it's going to come from. They need some irrational confidence, guys. Like Paolo and Franz are your stars. They always have irrational confidence. Cole has irrational confidence, but doesn't always deliver. We know what the Magic need. So yes, there are immediate needs, and I can't debate you or argue against you if you think, yes, the Magic should address them now. Because they should. There is no more waiting. We are done with the development part of this rebuild. We are in the let's figure out how to build the best winning roster we can part. We need to find a way to make Paolo and Franz's job easier by spreading the floor, by getting them easy shots so they don't have to create as much, easing their load so they can be more efficient. That's where we're at right now. Now, again, I think the injuries have thrown a little bit of a wrench in some of these plans. The fact that the Magic dealt with all these injuries I think they're working new players in essentially. Paolo and Franz are getting back into game shape. They're getting back into midseason shape. They're not there yet. Very clearly, they're not there yet. And the Magic are puttering along until they get there. They're going to have good games, they're going to have bad games, but they're struggling to get there. That is an argument for doing things later. So is this. The options for the Magic open up a lot more because Wendell Carter's available. Cole Anthony and Gary Harris are not going anywhere. Their value is probably not going to significantly change. The only thing you lose by waiting is time. The fact that if Sexton's your target, Sexton could be gone. You lose that option. You risk someone swooping in to get your guy. Essentially. So if there's it's kind of like the draft. If there's a guy you really want, go out and get him. Like that's really what I believe. If there's a guy that you think is absolutely your guy, go get him. To me, yeah, I think I would do that for Sexton. To add that extra oomph that we know the Magic need anyway. There's no reason to wait. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Gather as much information as you can on him. That's kind of how I feel, but you might feel that way about Anthony Simons. Simons would give this team some shooting. I see him coming off the bench. I know some fans are surprised that I would say that, but as a super six man, yeah, I think he would be excellent. And give this team some creation and spot up shooting that they don't have. And he's never been asked to defend in his life. We'll see. But as I have said a million times, this season is not about this season. The Magic are not out here to save this season, in air quotes, because this season ultimately isn't what they're working for. They're not going to make a deal that's just about this season. That's why, when you pitch Malcolm Brogdon, that's too short term. That's too small in my estimation. Because Malcolm Brogdon's not going to be on this team in 2 to 3 years, and you're going to waste assets to do that, to bring him in. Now, the reason why I think waiting is a good choice too. I don't think there's a bad choice here. It's just making sure you get the right guy at the end of the day. No matter when it happens, get an impact player. You got to do something. Get an impact player. The reason why I think waiting is the choice is because you don't want to waste potential draft capital now that you could use in the offseason. Because in the offseason, teams assess the entire season. Right now, we know who the sellers are. There's a reason why we're talking Colin Sexton, Utah Jazz. There's a reason why we're talking Anthony Simons, Portland Trailblazers. You're looking at the tanking teams and saying, who can we grab off the worst teams in the league that want cap room? The contending teams want to add players. The bad teams want to cut salary and send players out. The offseason is a little different. The offseason, everyone kind of evaluates their season. They begin to think, what do we need? And then they begin to say, are we ready to cut bait? Do we need to go into this draft? You have a fuller picture, and teams are beginning to think, how do we move this forward? The Magic are looking to do a consolidation trade. So, but they don't have necessarily expiring contracts to get it done. That's going to be, again, how valuable expiring contracts? Good question. It's not easy. There are arguments on both sides of this ledger. And look, Jeff Weltman has tough decisions ahead. For the first time since this rebuild started, since the Nikola Vucevic trade, Weltman's got to be ruthless. He's going to have to make tough decisions that might be unpopular in the locker room. But it's going to be something that makes the team better, that increases the overall talent level. That's where the team has to be. That's what the team has to do. And the Magic have big decisions to make here in the next week. Again, unfortunately, they're not going to have a lot of time to assess their roster while healthy. There's always going to be a bit of what could have been with this group and this season. But even if the Magic somehow sneak to fourth, then we'll be like, okay, this team should have been the 3 seed if they would have been healthy all year. They could have fought for the 2 or it kind of put themselves in that Boston-Cleveland range. There's always going to be a little bit of what if with this season because of how much time has been lost. And how you assess that is so important to the big picture and so important to where Jeff Weltman goes next. I honestly don't know what's going to happen. My instinct tells me the Magic are going to sit tight at the deadline and wait for the offseason. I have nothing to back that up. I'm not reporting that. That's just what my instinct tells me. That's what my gut tells me. But I also know, like I'm sure all of you know, the Magic have to do something. Like, God love this roster. They have fought hard all year. We all see the flaws. And if we see the flaws, we know every team in the NBA sees the flaws. And it's time to more seriously address these offensive issues and more seriously address the shortcomings that lead to losses like Monday night's loss. We've had too many of those. The Magic have the second worst offense in the league. That can't happen if we're going to contend for a championship one day. That's the truth. And so we know we are entering an active period. Again, whether they make a deal at the deadline or whether they make a deal in the offseason, a deal is coming to make this offense better. They may spend the mid-level exception to improve this offense. There's still a bit of let young guys get better, and I'm all for that too. This is still a young roster. But if this team is serious about winning, then they're going to start by adding offensive players very, very soon. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And those battle lines a week ahead of the trade deadline are pretty well drawn. It's just what the Magic want to do. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD. Find me on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. For the latest, you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all Phone Podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also find us on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On Magic Daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. Also, one more thing. If you didn't catch it earlier in the feed, the Locked On NBA Eastern Conference squad is here. We're meeting every week to discuss the biggest issues in the Eastern Conference. I missed out this week's episode, but they talked about the Orlando Magic, get the national perspective from the Locked On NBA hosts over on the Locked On NBA East squad. Hopefully they said nice things. There's not much nice to say. We're getting what we deserve right now. But check it out. It's on the Locked On Magic feed. Don't have to do anything different. It's just the last episode before this one. Check it out today. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we'll talk about how bringing Goga Bitadze back and getting healthy finally seems to be putting players in the right roles. We'll get to that tomorrow, plus an update from practice. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.